All right, what is happening, everybody? I think we're live now. Good to see some people in the chat there. What's going on? And I've got someone in the Discord here. Falcon, what's going on? You there? I think I got to unmute you first. There we go.
Here. Stop.
I think everyone can hear you out there. Let me just turn up my audio a bit. And you had something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the topic of possibly uniting the right in America
there?
after what happened in Charlottesville.
Okay, so the whole Unite the Right rally thing, right?
Yes.
I gotcha. Well, I briefly talked about it before. I thought it was kind of a disaster, just based off of all the PR that happened afterwards. You know, it wasn't exactly the best thing in the world for any of the nationalist movements here. I think it could work again, but there needs to be some vetting beforehand. So there also needs to be it needs to be in a city where the police are going to actually do their jobs and not allow there to be a clash of sides between the protesters and the Antifa and the nationalists, essentially. So what did you think about the rally?
No, I agree that it was a failure.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know because in the past, a lot of movements throughout the world have seen success in uniting the right.
Yeah, it seems like every time I talk about the Unite the Right rally, it's like, oh, you're just, you're counter signaling or you're a cuck or whatever. But it's like, nah, I mean, if you looked objectively, it was a disaster. It was not a good image for people to say. And especially because someone died, and, obviously there's some info in there that the media overlooked, but they made it sound like, oh, suddenly the nationalists have a rally and someone dies. It's like, no, that's not what happened. But we should have seen this coming,
Oh yeah, of course. They're always going to paint us in a bad light.
Exactly. Yeah. So I talked to Gunshine Fash earlier a couple of weeks ago about this, and I told him, yeah, going out in public and doing these rallies is great, but I don't think it's the time, and there also needs to be a lot more vetting. You can't just have someone like TWP show up and kind of shit on the whole thing. It's just ammunition that's going to be used against us, It's not that I have a problem with these people, but it's like they give us all a bad name just because of how the media operates.
We don't have to worry about TWP anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Anyone watching out there, if you want to join the chat, check the description of the stream. There's a link to Discord. You can get in here and chat with us. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Falcon?
No, not really.
I see you've got the third position in fascist tags. You want to talk about that a little bit? I like talking
fascism?
To you. Yeah.
Well, I only recently came to my current political position, but I tend to agree with most of the doctrine of fascism and third positionism. There's a few things I disagree with it, though.
What things do you disagree with?
Mainly, and I'm sure you'll dislike this, but specifically the idea of race realism. I don't completely deny the ideas that it presents, but I don't completely either.
Do you think that race realism is an inherent part of the fascist political system?
Not inherently, but most tend to ascribe to it.
I got you. Yeah. Because it seems like from everything I've read about the fascist movement, it would appear that the racial component is missing. So I did a video describing sort of the tree of the right wing political thought. And once you get up past, the alt-right and the centrist and all that, you actually start getting up into the right-wing politics. You branch off into right-wing socialism. And well, socialism is a bad word, but that's what most people know it by. So you get into right-wing socialism, and then you have two choices. You can go towards fully fledged National Socialism, or you can go towards something like fascism. But the difference between the two is that National Socialism takes the racial part and makes it the primary motivator, while fascist, the primary motivator is the state and the absolutism of the state. So, that's where I disagree with the sort of fascist position, is that it's not entirely based on a group or group identity. It's just based on the collective power of the state. So I don't
Well,
know.
I think it tends to be how you define it, nationalism. Like, is it like ethnic nationalism, or is it like nationalism in one's country and like nationhood? Like, because nationalism is a big part of fascism, but I guess you can mold it however you want, depending on the type of nationalism.
Yeah, absolutely. It just seems like from I read about these the doctrines of fascism, and it seems like, yeah, the nation state is very important, but it seems like it's not the be all end all. It's more of the state is the be all end all of fascism. So I mean, is there any particular branch of fascism that you like or that you prescribe to? Is it Spanish, Italian, New
I
American?
like Italian the most, but I tend to ascribe to some things that the National Socialists use too, such as, I like eugenics. That's a very big thing I would add. Even more militarism than natural fascism has. Expansionism, and those type of things are things I would add that regular Italian fascism does not have.
Right, I got you. Okay, yeah, because as far as I've read, Italian fascism is a bit out of date, but there's still some good merits in there every now and again. We got some more people here in the chat room. What's up, Tommy and Tom the Lamb?
Hello,
Got
Tom the Lam.
Oh, the Lamb. I got you. What's going on, guys?
What's up? What's where the hell am I? What's going on?
You are live on the internet right now. we're just
live on the internet. Are we streaming?
Yeah, I've got the live stream going right now. So
we're cool.
It's just
I don't fucking dox myself. That's helpful. Dude, fix your fucking mic. Why does it echo?
It's the way I have it set up. I got to be more careful about muting myself. So
you could use push to talk.
Yeah, I know. I'm working it out. This is a test stream. This is boomertech.
And turn off.
Get your shit together, man.
And turn off the little noise every time you unmute. Let's not deal with that, please. Cool, he's fixing it. Hey, Falconarie. How do you spell
what's up?
How do you pronounce your name?
Falconieri.
Yeah, you're a fucking idiot. Fascism? Fascism isn't viable in the West, you moron. What are you talking about? Get the fuck out of here.
I never said that.
Although, okay, so you advocate for a political system that's completely unviable in the world that you live in. All right, that makes you not an idiot, I guess. What a moron.
Hey.
If there's
any other further disruption, I will add.
Yeah, everybody just started talking at once. Nobody knows who the fuck is saying anything right now. Yeah, go ahead,
one at a
Falconer.
time.
Or something.
I wouldn't say fascism is specifically for the West. I would think that you could pretty much apply it really anywhere.
Okay, that's why I specified in the world that you live in now. Do you remember that?
Oh no, right now, no, fascism would not work right now. I wouldn't argue for that. Right in the current world, it definitely would not work.
That's what I said. You're literally just repeating what I said.
Yeah.
Well, this is fun.
So
People usually don't crumble to me that easily.
Well, I don't think we really talked about, like, in reality. I think it was just more political. I was asking more about his political theory, not whether it was viable now. We just started talking when you guys jumped in. So, is the echo still there?
No, it's done.
Okay.
Yeah, it's done. You fixed it. Good job.
Okay, I'm going back to voice activity. There we go.
Cool. Amazing.
Sugar, what's going on, man? You want to talk about something? The floor is yours.
I love this guy's PFP.
Oh.
What's up? Is Classless here?
He's not here. He's still jacking it in the Fortnite server, so.
No, man, I don't have a topic. I just swung by to see what you guys are doing.
I have topics, eventually something on it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a topic too, but I'd much rather interact with you guys if you have something, so I guess we'll leave it towards the end.
Oh, wait.
There's Classless.
Beetlejuice.
And then there's Marcus. What's up, guys?
Hace mucho tiempo que no visto.
What?
In my paper, what I was writing about was the consequentialist, I guess, argument for death penalty, which I think works out.
You want to expand on that a little bit and tell us more about it?
Go to my paper. I was thinking a lot during writing this. I also like to write because when you're right, start to you're like maybe I didn't listen. Maybe I should think more on it. You
know? Yeah, it's if you wanted
it's more talking to yourself, but you know. And the reason I did this, at first it came to abortion, right, which is like very vague, and I was like, well, I can't just say abortion. There's more to this than just the topic is life. I would specifically, it's just abortion. Life was guilty life, innocent life, which some people there is none to, but I like to see evidence of such things.
I don't know if it's just me, but you're kind of breaking up a little bit there, Tommy.
Yeah, I see it too.
I fix your goddamn. There we go. What's up, Swishy? Oh, you just kicked Tommy out. What's going on? Hello?
Hey, what's up? Tommy got kicked?
No, he left, and I think Swishy took his place, but he's not talking.
Yo.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'll just give a quick warning. Discord has been giving everybody trouble this evening, so if people have to leave to reset their microphones, it's happened since about 7 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I'd like to remind all the mods in this channel that when you do pop in, you are not muted, so feel free to mute because this is Mirmir's Well.
I don't care. You guys can talk. It's just a test stream. I had a couple things I wanted to talk about, but taking suggestions, interacting with the people, that kind of thing.
Wait, apparently Marcus cannot hear anybody or talk.
I know
that is my apologies. I did mute him because he was talking and screaming quite a bit, and I didn't want him to ruin Mirmir's Well. He is unmuted.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's my bad. I didn't know I was not muted when I was talking in Spanish. I was. Yeah.
Oh no, that's about Marcus. Got his real estate agent.
He just wanted to listen in, but.
Oh yeah.
If you are not a mod, you are muted when you hop in this channel.
Which is a good thing. Yeah, Tommy, you were saying?
What was that I cut off on? Is what I want to know.
You'd mentioned something about abortion.
Yeah. So abortion, which I think is innocent versus guilty life, and some would argue that guilty and innocent doesn't really exist, but I would like to see evidence for that. So I usually go into detail about, I guess the consequentialist approach to the execution of guilty life.
The execution of guilty life. Can you expand on that?
Yes. Those with a guilty conscience. Now, I don't think that the one-on-one choice is death. There has been cases for redistributive justice, right? Where the person has a chance to redeem themselves as a person in society. And it tends to work out, but I mean, I also think that the death penalty is also a case.
Where do you draw the line at like rehabilitation and, you know, how much is too much in the criminal justice system? Like someone who's a repeat offender?
I think intent plays a huge role in that, which is why I would say that so in Indiana, I've read many cases from Indiana, and it tends to be intent. Intent is a huge thing that they point out on.
Yep.
And if the intention is horrible, it literally leads to death penalty. So like, here's a good idea. So the guy who knowingly went into the black church and shot up a bunch of black people, the intent was clear. Why he went there, there are notes from him. Pretty much, it was premeditated.
It's premeditated,
intent, yeah. So his intent was definitely there. I think intention is huge on that. So like, which is also in Indiana, there was a guy that was like, it goes deeper than that. What I read into. So there's also cases for intentions, because intent. There's a guy who crashed while he was on his phone and he killed someone. But then they were arguing that there are many cases where it's I don't know, like it sounded like they were arguing for stupidity. They're just like, if they're not smart, it was
just
really
kill all the
strange.
dumb
They were
people,
like,
huh?
Yeah, they were going way in depth with this. Like it was more than just, oh, the guy's dumbass, he crashed with his phone and killed somebody. They went beyond that as well. And,
like he was mentally deficient.
No, like they were like, oh well, if there's a guy that's like, I don't know, playing games on his phone. I was like, why does that matter? But I don't know. I don't know.
What do you think about state sanctioned death penalties as a whole?
Well, I mean, I think right now in Indiana, we have a pretty big prison where people like Charlie Manson or Dylan Roof have gone to. Dylan Roof is now currently being held in like, I believe it's the west side of Indiana.
Do you think there's, well, first I'd have to ask, do you have any moral objections to the state sanctioning of the death penalty?
Yes, I would say that the death penalty, I'm still building upon this. See, I'm not really in the like late stages of building up how I would see it justified. But for now, I'm slowly like building. I mean, I have like a shell of an argument, and I'm slowly building that up. I guess that makes sense.
I got you. Yeah, it's a good place to start. You know, you don't want to jump too far into things. Dylan Roof was bad optics.
You know, so like death penalty justified, and then I build from up there to the top, which the top would have to be. I've been thinking about reading a book called. Hold on, let me find the link to it. I probably put in education. Let me see.
Yep. I see Pax Americana is in the chat here. If you at Sugart, SHUGHART, he's in the chat. He can assign you a role if you'd like. And then you can get in
by man shall his blood be shed. The Catholic, it argues for the death penalty. And this whole new movement of Catholicism and how it's like been merging with these terrible lefty politics, you know. Oh, you can't. You have to be pro-life all the way. You can't. That's a contradiction.
Reform Christianity,
which is where innocence and guilty comes into play. Exactly. That's why they play a huge role. Is the innocent life versus the guilty.
I got you. So is this perspective you have? Is it coming from a Catholic perspective entirely, or is it just kind of a justification?
I'm slowly trying to build my way up to that. Yes, I'm currently developing it.
I got you. All right.
And I would
so
say that the top base would have to be that book, and then I'll read that book and so forth. But right now I'm still in the thinking process and still going through different arguments.
right, you want to make sure you got all your bases covered.
Yeah.
I got you.
I'm also religious. I'm a Christian. I think I could just straight up go to the argument from a religious perspective
Sure, let's
instead
hear
of having
it. First, what type of Christianity, and then go into it.
non-denominational, but I'm Protestant.
Cuck.
No, well, listen, I've been thinking about going to a Lutheran church because, well, compared to New Age Catholic churches, Lutheran is way more Catholic in the church styles than they are in either fucking. If you go to Catholic churches, they got rock bands and it's bullshit. It's all heretical. It's all fucking bullshit and it's stupid, disgusting. And you go to like Lutheran, they're all, they're doing the ritual and it's great,
Right. Just real quick, Pax Americana, I'm going to unmute you there so you can freely talk whenever you want to. But back to Tom.
Great, another fascist.
All right, Tom, let's hear your non-denominational cut Christianity argument.
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty simple. The Bible makes it clear we're not allowed to murder other humans. A human life, right? A fetus is a human life, therefore you can't murder it without a good enough reason.
Yes, I agree. An innocent life.
So that makes me wonder, what is the good enough reason? Where do you draw the line?
If it's going to kill the mother. That's when I leave it up to the mother.
Oh, okay, so this is in terms of like abortion?
Yes.
What about in particular like public execution or just the death penalty in general for like criminals? Is there do you go straight from like, okay, if you steal something we're going to shoot you in the back of the head, or is it more lax? Is there a repeal process in your justice system? What do you got?
A repeal? Wait, you asked
process.
Like question. You asked like 3 questions. You said, "What would I? Where am I on public executions? What would I do with thieves? And then is my justice system lax?"
Yeah,
I don't know which one to.
Any of them.
Okay, so when it comes to government in general, I base how I want my government to be run not off of my religion. Like, I don't want a theocracy. I want it to be based off of basically social contract theory, if you know what that is.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. So with thieves, like, you just throw them in jail and then make them restitution, basically work back whatever they attempted to steal or pay back whatever they stole. Murderers, I don't want to kill them, but
if it's premeditated, like actual, okay, this guy was planning and plotting, is that good enough? A good enough justification?
Oh, fuck you, classless politics. Fuck you. So my issue, I guess, with execution is, unfortunately, my religion comes into this, which makes me hesitant to make any claim about it, since I already said I want religion out of my government. But I don't think I can kill anybody or allow for my government to kill anybody justifiably so, unless they have that justification given to them by God.
Which
okay.
a theocracy.
I'm in is like, I can't make that judgment. Only God can, at least from my perspective. But if I want God out of my government, how could I ever make that decision? You know?
So you're saying that you're against theocracy? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, totally.
But
yeah.
But do you
pretty?
But do you want your politicians to be informed by their religion?
Not really. No, I'd rather have them decide our laws or have their fighting for our laws.
If I may interject for just a second.
Yes.
The thing is, you have to have some punishment for whatever for people who break the law. And if it's not a harsh punishment for harsh crime, people will not learn. That's the reason. That's part of the reason that society is beginning to collapse in on itself now.
I disagree with that.
And the thing, and
England's back in the medieval era, where if you stole, you got your fucking head chopped off, and there was still thieving. It was terrible back then.
So, do you agree with the consequences?
There is an after effect that I don't think many people realize. this old criminal justice system from the old world, is that when a murderer murders someone, in a premeditated fashion, killing them or killing off their family prevented whatever possible genetic influence it may have had on their decisions. So over a long period of time, you see European societies becoming less and less violent because of the death penalty politics that were alive in a lot of states. So it's something to think about. There are after effects that you may not know of.
And also, if the gentleman who said he doesn't believe, the gentleman that was in here that was anti-abortion, which I am as well, but someone said something about innocent life. I have to say there is no such thing. Children, anything is able
to sin.
Oh, he cut out there.
Yeah.
Wait,
To
Pax, you're cutting out.
I'm sorry. This push to talk is getting really weird.
I just reconnected. I don't know what happened. Something happened.
Anything is able to do great evil, and if you can do great evil, you're not innocent. So I have to throw that argument out the window.
Is that an argument from original sin, sort of?
No, that's if you can commit great acts of evil, such as murder, at any age. There's reason enough to execute you or to put you in prison.
Well, it seems a bit vague. You say if you have the capability. I mean, we all have the capability to do so from a relatively young age.
Yeah, no, that's
that's my point. That's why I say there is no such thing as this innocent soul.
Right. Okay.
Just because you're under a certain age, it doesn't make you magically unable to commit great acts of terror and horror.
Sure,
well, this is life we're talking about, and the right to life. And I would say that there are innocent lives and there are guilty ones.
In nature, you don't have the right to life. In nature, nature can throw a curveball and you can just drop dead before you're ever born. If your mother dies while she's carrying you, your life is extinguished.
No, you have a right to life as given to you by God.
Yes.
Until you die, you continue to have that right to life, and that right to life should be defended.
So
well, the thing about it is, I am anti-abortion. I don't believe it's right to kill your offspring. But the thing about it is, guys, the argument you're going to buy is all wrong. It's look what Jesus did argument. It's not coherent.
What?
That is not the case at all. But okay.
What did he say? I couldn't understand what he said.
Because Jesus.
What about because Jesus? I didn't see any argument.
He's saying that the basis of
it was because Jesus.
Yeah, he's saying that the basis of your argument comes from a Christian perspective.
Okay. No, in that case, I can change up and use my social contract idea for why I think abortion is wrong. Right? If that's another human being, you have the non-aggression principle, so you can't kill it based off of that principle.
Yeah.
Well, once again, with the non-aggression principle, the thing is, it only matters if everyone agrees to it. Not everyone agrees to the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle is flawed in nature because people are naturally aggressive and are going to fight for territory once they feel the need. So both are logical dead ends.
I would also
I'm
say
sorry,
that
if you're talking about a political system where we're outlawing abortion, right? You can be aggressive towards that system. You're going to lose, and you will not be allowed to have an abortion or promote abortion, right? Not necessarily a might makes right, but more of a socially agreed upon.
No, it is might makes right, because even if society agrees upon it, you can't enforce it unless you're willing to throw down force. Unless there is a consequence against it, people are going to do it. It makes no reason to have a law without having enforcement.
It's not forced outside of society, so it's not a might makes right argument. It's an agreed upon social contract.
Okay, yeah, say I get my girlfriend pregnant, and we live in a state where they say, "Oh, okay, no abortion," but there's a doctor that says, "Hey, $50 extra and I'll give you that abortion." What are you going to do to that guy if we get that abortion? What are you going to do to me and my girlfriend? Without might makes right.
I wouldn't do, okay, in this hypothetical, in this government in which I'm running, I guess. Right, I'm going to disbar the doctor and probably find him guilty of murder. You and your girlfriend would probably go to jail for participating in murder. I don't know what the.
So if we refuse to go, how would you enforce that? Without might makes right.
I think you're confusing enforcing the law with making the law right because it's the law. Those are two different things.
They're one and the same. In order to have a law, you have to be able to enforce it. If you can't enforce a law, the law is irrelevant.
Right or wrong. No, the enforcement of that law isn't what makes that law right or wrong.
Well, in this case, what you're saying makes the. I'm sorry.
I think Tom, what he's using the libertarian argument to bring up a point, which is that if you have to be able to enforce this law to make it a law. I mean, that's what backs up laws. The social contract is great, but it's an abstract concept. You know, if you really want to prevent people from having abortions in your state or whatever, you're going to have to enforce it, you know, by law. You're going to have
right. I'd be enforcing the social contract.
Well, forcing force implies violence of some kind.
Uh-huh.
Do you get what we're going to?
No.
Oh boy, Pax, you want to take it?
Well, the thing is I believe in enforced because I would say that the justification is God Himself, which would be a theocracy, correct?
May I ask the two people that are talking, what political system do you adhere by? Are you libertarian, fascist?
I don't care. I like the one we have now.
An extremely authoritarian theocracy, like almost in the verge of fascism.
So the guy that was just talking, you believe in might is right as long as Jesus wills it. Deus Volt.
Yes.
Okay, well, that is how you end up in a dark age without technological advancement. I believe to deny knowledge and to deny fact is the greatest sin someone can commit.
Well, hold on, Pax. Hold on. The whole dark age thing is a myth. Without the church, I think there would be an actual lapse in the technological age. I'm not religious, but you have to look at some historical facts here. You know, the church was a caterer of science and technology, and the Catholic Church even today has a very decent stance.
Big bang.
Yeah, I mean they have a very good stance on science. They think that science brings them closer to God Himself, which is, I mean, out of all theocratic thought, that's pretty damn good.
I agree with that mentality, but the thing about it is, with the Catholics, what caused the Dark Age, in my belief, is the Catholics taught just about everyone how to read and write.
I would try to disagree with that.
But most monks,
the Dark Ages have been caused by the barbarian invasions that destroyed everything that was built up by the Romans. So now what caused the Dark Ages on the chaos because of the power vacuum left by the great power. So now what caused the Dark Age, not necessarily the church. The church set it in the right structure.
It's a multifaceted
monks
issue.
And religious scribes.
What I'm speaking on is
holding on to scientific advancements is what brought Europe out of the Dark Ages.
What I'm speaking on is the suppression of ideas caused by religious institutions if they do not agree with that religious institution, such as with Galileo. Now, they have a track record of burning people at the stake who don't agree with the church, and that prolonged the Dark Ages. And if you have a radical theocracy, that will suppress knowledge that doesn't agree with the church, yes, that could contribute heavily to being in a dark age, especially a technological dark age.
I think
I guess at that point, when we have to define what a dark age is, then, because I have a somewhat different view of what a dark age is.
Well, a dark age, what I was told is a dark age is an umbrella term for a lag behind in either social, economic, or scientific discovery or mobility.
Yeah, and I mean, the historical dark age it's a very nuanced topic, but, you know, if you're going to have theocracy, I would hope that there would be some science and technology involved. Otherwise, you would falter to the wayside, and you probably wouldn't be any better than any third world country. So, I mean, as long as it's the right kind of theocracy, I guess it could work. You know, I'm a secular person, but I have nothing against that position per se. You know, as long as it's not dividing and causing more religious conflict in between, you know, people of Europe, I'm cool with it. Any comments, anyone?
Well, going on to the topic of an abortion, do you guys think there's a way to justify being against abortions without a religious perspective?
Of course.
Yep.
Hello? Yeah. Oh,
hello,
fuck.
Master Chief. Welcome to the show. Goldstein, I see you're talking, but no sound's coming out. You are unmuted.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Hey, what happened to the liberalist one, like
The what?
Libertarian guy.
the liberalist channel.
Oh, you mean the one that was full of traps and gay porn?
It got
Was
shut
that the
down
one
because of child
run
porn.
by the lesbian from Lebanon?
It got
Well,
shut
it
down
got
from
shut
child
down
porn.
for
Yeah,
obvious
someone starts
reasons.
ending child porn. That's against terms of service, and they got shut down for that.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
it's been one hell of a ride there.
There's a
That's
new
what happens
server,
when you
but
let
it's
anybody
pretty
in.
dead.
It was around 5 days long of a lifespan.
I mean, that's
No,
what
I had one
happens.
5 days.
You know, like when you let degeneracy seep in, you don't do any vetting. Andy, god damn it.
Sounds like liberalism.
Exactly. It's actually a good example of liberalistism in practice, you know? This sort of freedom
Yeah,
movement.
live and let live.
Yeah, live and let post trap porn and then get banned.
Which would be a great time to. I wish Crambo was online because he has a great
Hey,
justification.
Dortex. Hold on, let me unmute you, my friend. What's
Oh,
going
Dortex.
on, Dortex?
Hold on. I do just want to chime in and say that I can gladly stand in for the cuck who left earlier there, Tom the Lamb, and Crambo when he's not around. I'm not as far as Crambo, but I can stand in.
Well,
Yeah,
just
Okay,
no,
so-
Crambo,
real
usually
quick.
says,
Hold on, everyone,
as
real
long as
quick.
all right.
So Tom's position, I think he's at an impasse where he's going to have to change his beliefs, because on the one hand, he's a reformist Protestant Christian that says, you know, life is sacred, this sort of very cucky new age Christianity. But on the other hand, he wants his politicians to be informed by religion and all this other shit. It seems contradictory, so maybe we'll get somewhere with him eventually. Dortex, you were saying?
So I hop on the stream for a few minutes. I look at the chat. I see some random spurg asking for me to come on here for some fucking reason.
Yep.
And okay, what is this about child pornography now? What the fuck?
Liberalist.
So
Yeah, they're both lists.
Andy Worski
Andy
started.
Raceworski.
Yeah, Andy Raceworski. Hail Worski. He started a Discord channel for the Liberalist of Canada, and he was making fun of the Liberalist, and he was talking there. He was letting people post like pornography. It was like a pornography Discord, and then eventually, I think someone started posting child porn, and then the whole thing got shut down. It was really funny.
Okay, so we talking 17 and 364 days.
I wasn't there when it happened, so I can't confirm.
Am I muted?
They listen to Cods playing in the background. Beat them, please.
So okay, but let's be edgy. Let's be edgy for a moment. Should we legalize child porn?
No, we should
No.
get some short ropes and tall trees, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, but consider this. What if the Jews hack into your computer and then they put in child porn, right? They don't like that you're all right. And all they have to do is I don't know, a thumb drive. Copy over a few pictures, call the police with an anonymous tip, bam. You're a sex offender now.
Well, in the ideal society, there's not going to be any Skypes around anyway, so I don't think that would be an issue.
Or Jews.
Well, that
I'm
In the ideal society, there are no Jews. So.
oh Jesus Christ, Pax, you got to fix your mic, man.
I'm just saying, this isn't the ideal society. All it takes is a thumb drive or
Hey, it's not illegal if you're also a child, right?
It is totally illegal.
That's an interesting topic. The
That's such
interaction
a big
between teens. I mean, who here didn't screw around a little bit when they were teens?
I mean, yeah.
I'm still a teen.
Bro, I'm at an
Then
impasse.
again,
'cause
Indiana
I have,
had Romeo and Juliet laws, so it was fun.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I have nudes on my phone, and it's like, when do you delete that? Like, when does it become socially unacceptable to have sophomore age females naked on your phone?
How old are you?
Right? Like, when should I delete that?
I mean,
I'm a sophomore.
You should probably
when you turn 18.
Yeah, you should probably delete that when you turn 18, because then it gets into a gray area, and then we have to do all this bureaucracy and shit. It's like,
Yeah, that's
No.
like let's say there's a guy, right, and he had like I don't know. This is like like a shitty generation. So I'm gonna let's say that like a little 5-year-old Tommy, gets his nude from his hoe. She's coming by in the Fisher Price car. Like I got my nudes, and then it's like 20 years later. Like, is it okay? Is it okay?
Because
no,
like you
I
got
don't
them
think
like
no, it's not okay,
consentingly,
though.
but so did some of the
It's
pedos out there. You know,
yeah, but it's
it's like
not okay.
where do you draw the line?
Yeah,
It's not okay.
but consider this. Consider this. No one was
Consider it.
exploited in all of this.
I mean, they exploited themselves
Well,
for my
Crambo would argue
manipulation.
that it wasn't a violation of human rights if it was consensual.
Yeah, but we're talking about 5-year-old Tommy getting some pictures from his hose. I'm just saying his hoe gave it up willingly.
Yeah, it's consensual, but I still don't think it's okay. I think I don't. To be honest, this is loaded already because I don't think I should be doing that. It's sinful.
Can I chime in on this? Because I do just want to let everybody know that there is precedence in North America for underage people being
Yes,
charged
that
with
is-
taking their
Exactly.
own naked selfies.
Which
so
is
if you are
ridiculous.
underage, you can be charged with producing porn of yourself. Just to note.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah,
fine.
Just another reason to legalize child porn.
Oh Jesus. Destiny, get out.
What kind of whore do you have to be?
Destiny
Like,
was
to do that to
Audio
yourself?
Meant to be a warning, folks. That was meant to be a warning.
Could we re-legalize the lynchman's license?
Oh God.
I think we need to move on.
Yeah, okay, so the main topic that I wanted to talk about tonight with everyone is earlier today there was a stream on the Baked Alaska Experience. Mustard Chief, goddammit, what are you doing?
Missed that one. Yeah,
You're muted. Okay, so there was a stream between Richard Spencer and Adam Kokesh on the Baked Alaska Experience. Did anyone here catch that by any chance? It's very interesting.
No.
I saw it, but I
Nope.
missed it. Like I didn't like. I saw like the notification, but I didn't click on it.
Okay, well, I was going to summarize it here tonight. Hold on one sec. Classless, yeah, if you want to moderate a bit, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it. But essentially, it boils down to the same old arguments that Adam Kokesh always does. He goes on his ANCAP spiel, and he goes on these platitudes about self-ownership and all this wonderful stuff, and then he calls pretty much everyone on the alt-right a racist, and that racism is bad, and typical cuck tier stuff. And then Richard Spencer, he does a decent job, but he doesn't really like call him out on his bullshit enough. Like he could have very easily said, Adam, you're an ideologue and none of this shit will work in reality, and here's why. But he didn't actually do that. So if anyone's out there, if you want to see a shit fest, go and watch it. But other than that, it wasn't really worth the 2 hours that I spent watching it. So
Was there a clear winner?
Not really. I mean, of course, Richard Spencer kind of trounced all over him, but with Adam Kokesh, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. It's too easy.
We need Rinnick Fuentes with his high diversity rate.
Yeah. I'd like to see Nick or someone against Adam Kokesh. Actually, if you want to see Adam Kokesh get blown the fuck out, watch his debate with Stefan Molyneux 2 months ago. It was amazing. He got absolutely anally annihilated
I
by another
respect
libertarian.
Molyneux as a libertarian.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think he's a pretty good libertarian.
And he's a race
He's
realist.
consistent.
Yeah,
Which if you
What did
start to be
Molyneux
like,
go after him about?
Well, Molyneux is a libertarian. I think he may have been considered an ANCAP at some point, but since Trump, he's really changed his tune to be much more nationalistic because he's super woke on the race and IQ question. So he understands, borders and enforcement and all that. And Adam tried to sort of weave this web of anarcho-capitalism and open borders and this, that, and the other on principle. And Molyneux just stepped all over him and showed him the statistics. And I did a response video to that as well, showing that, hey, these people that are coming in primarily vote for statist policies. The people that you're allowing into your society are the antithesis of your beliefs, and you're letting them in anyway. So what's the point?
Yeah.
You're just going to get a state anyway.
They're the opposition's voters.
Exactly. Yeah. So it makes zero sense. And what's that guy's name? Shane Killian. I trashed him as well in another video where he was talking to alt hype about open borders. It's so predictable.
Alt hype's pretty cool.
Right. I think a thing that a lot of libertarians need to understand, and if you are catching on to, non-whites really don't give a shit about libertarianism. And if you want to keep about self-ownership and individualism, you kind of have to exclude a few people.
Yeah, I mean, there's if you want a a libertarian state, you know, if you want to embrace the principles of the NAP or self ownership, you gotta shoo out some undesirables.
I don't think it would really last long by itself, which is why I think that you could have your little libertarian group, you know, but under authority, it would work pretty well. I don't think that you're gonna have no authority, you know.
I think there's an argument to be made about the state and order outside of the state just being used as a tool to secure your future. I think there's a philosophical argument there. I just haven't made it yet.
Libertarian fascism.
Not exactly. I think that, like, in a very high trust, high intelligence society like Europe, I mean, the libertarian ideas kind of formulate by default. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you can still have a state like the Third Reich pre-war. We're talking pre-war, where it's an authoritarian state. There's a single party. There's a single man in power. But
yet there are socially libertarian ideals. Yes,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, there was gun ownership and personal liberties. There was free market stuff. I mean, obviously, you're going to get the state intervening because they want to protect the well-being of the society, of the race. But it was much more libertarian than any like leftist authoritarian government. I mean, that's one of the worst things you can have is a leftist authoritarian government. Which is why I make the
case that libertarians need to. They usually survive off the authority. I don't think without the authority, I don't think libertarians would survive.
Yeah, it doesn't seem very likely, considering how many external threats there are.
Because when they say you're a racist, they have no authority over that. What are they going to do? What? Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
You could also argue that libertarian states naturally degenerate over time, even with closed borders.
Oh, of course.
Yep, too much individualism is a cancer on the society, of the living organism of society.
I would say that libertarianism promotes degeneracy because there's no end. It's everything is of freedom. You can do anything. No one can tell you what to do, pretty much.
Well,
I can smoke in your face. It doesn't matter. That's my right. It doesn't matter. Your kids are getting cancer.
Yeah, I think it's capitalism taken too far, and you know, obviously the free market works, but to what extent is it doing more harm than good?
As long as you don't come from my goat brides and my war brides, I'm fine.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, but real problem.
Did you say goat brides?
Yeah.
I think my recreation.
I think he means sheep wives.
Well, I'm Scottish, so you're damn right. I said goat brides are sheep. It doesn't matter. They go by and they're woolly.
Oh my god, Dortex, you were saying something?
Yeah, Is it just me, or like most libertarians like anarchists in hiding?
Well, it's a pipeline. So the video I did about right-wing politics is like when you slowly embrace the ideas of libertarianism, the end result, the logical end result, is anarcho-capitalism. Because, you know, once you start questioning the illegitimacy of the state, it kind of wears on your mind like a mind virus. You know, it's like, okay, how do I justify the state when I have all of this philosophy that I'm reading and subscribing to? It's very hard. Now, you can swivel from that and go like Rothbardian or Hoppian libertarianism, which is right libertarianism, which is better than all the other ones. Or you could go up to anarcho-nationalism, which is a bit of a, you know, hypocritical position, but it's better than fucking open borders and cap. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, can I ask, like, what do these people not understand? Our ancestors built the governments because we had anarchy, and they wanted a system in place to protect against the atrocities committed while having anarchy. And anarcho-capitalists are the worst. They say they hate states, but don't they realize that these freaking corporations that would spring up would freaking take over and become the state and become more authoritarian than anything? I mean, hell, in America, most of our rights are being trampled on by corporations. Like, what do they, like, how the hell can they believe this?
I think most ANCAPs will agree that corporations are a bad thing, but they never really provide any solution to that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds...
No, they usually blame the state.
Well, it all sounds good in theory, right? You know, you have all this competition and all this free trade and all that. It does hold up in theory, but when you actually look at where we are today, there are too many corporations with too much power that will... I mean, they're already dominating local populations right now, like in the rural United States. The only option you have for buying items is like Walmart, you know, in like a 30-mile radius. What do they do then? Well, Walmart is now becoming like, okay, you work here, we give you like a worker's, like a labor voucher, and you can buy stuff from Walmart, and that's how you feed your family. It's going to end up like that because of how things are in reality. Yeah, it's just like communism. It works on paper, but when you try and implement it, the whole thing falls apart because it's ridiculous.
Speaking of communism, I had a thing in school for my sociology thing. My teacher wanted us to pretend that Marxism worked, and pretend. She said that communism and that China and the USSR aren't true Marxist theory. And I posted some of the. I've read the Communist Manifesto multiple times.
Yeah, because they're mixed economies, and that's the only way they were even able to survive at a bare minimum is because they changed to a mixed economy. That's how bad Marxism is. They had to abandon it.
I pointed that out with China. Well, I pointed that out with China, and I pointed out Marx's 10 things that that should happen or would have to happen in most countries. And I said, this literally and I pointed out all the death tolls. And I told her, I said, literally, I told her, like, literally, this is direct influence of Marx, because I had to do it in APA, and I did it all right. And I told her, like, this is literally from Marx. 1846, Communist Manifesto, Chapter 2.
I'll give you something interesting if you want to delve a little bit deeper into the USSR. In the 20s, during Lenin's time, they were doing so poorly. Their production was so god-awful because of this communalism that they actually had to introduce markets into the state, and they had to make a whole bunch of reforms. If you look at the reforms of 24, 25, and 26, you'll see that they were on the verge of death again, and so they had to open up these markets. It was just awful.
Well, let's just say she got pissed because I did the death tolls as much as I could, and at the end I said, I'm a fascist, and y'all and the Holocaust supposedly happened.
Slow down.
That's 6 million. Well, no, I said that's 6 million fucking people that fascists quote unquote killed. Here is over 100 million that I just said, and not a damn bloodstain is on y'all's hands. Exactly. We can openly talk about communism and higher education, and you not get slapped the fuck out of. This shit is retarded.
Let me just say something to classless real quick. Let me rephrase my meaning there. When I say that communism works on paper, I mean that it works insofar as you have a small, tight-knit community on the village scale that works communally. Any size greater than about 300 people and the entire system collapses because you need so much bureaucracy to fix it. You know, that's where communalism started was in small villages and things like that. And then some people found a way to use it as an authoritarian power grab. But anyway.
Minecraft, basically.
Communism and I guess ANCAPism is that it's very logically consistent. Like if you buy into the presuppositions, everything just sort of follows.
Yeah, exactly. If you work from their axioms, it works. But then again, their axioms are all wrong.
And people are not logically consistent. We don't just follow whatever makes the most sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mimir.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if I can't chime in on that, I actually do agree with your perspective on communism. I was just trying to roll some people in the chat, but at the same time, I actually would apply that similar theory to libertarianism. I don't hear too many libertarians left in the chat, but I think libertarianism fails once you scale up in the same way that communism does.
Exactly, because the libertarian community, the village, let's call it for this example, relies on the enforcement of their borders in the state, the military, the balance that the state can provide to the economy, to the financial system is paramount in working out, the free market. I know we live in an usury-backed financial system, but if you could remove all that, I mean, it would be a powerhouse. So, I mean, their whole system relies on the state to secure their existence first before they can even interact in the marketplace.
Yeah, in a similar way that communism has its own flaw where it has to deal with general human nature in order to come to any kind of terms with its problem, but it always hits the same goddamn brick wall where you can't get past this. That's why I said control for a variable, right? There's just the ideas look so good, and it's like, yeah, but like, let's just point out all these variables you haven't controlled for. To simplify it, I'm going to quote, what's his name? Jeff Goldblum, life will find a way.
Go ahead. Someone say something.
As populations grow and markets become more complex, people will begin to realize that fascism is the only way forward. Just saying.
Well, I mean, my argument for fascism, well, because I'm a fascist myself too, although I'm not on your level. I don't say the Holocaust is a hoax, but I would suggest that concurrently in the current situation, fascism just needs to wait, right? Because the way that the world's heading, you see with the mounting debt and the growing political divide in most democratic countries, but you'll see happenings that in the future we'll have a situation similar to the Great Depression, when all that world debt comes crashing down on all of the world's countries, and people become radical, and they all three go two ways. They either go communist and socialist, or they all go outright fascist.
Yeah.
Or a third option, they welcome their robot overlords.
Oh no. Let's save the technological debate for another stream, Dortex. I'd love to talk to you about that. But
Okay.
Todd Whelan asked, "Is liberalism a gateway to socialism?" And my next question would be, what type of socialism are you talking about? Are you talking about the classical leftist socialism? Well, yeah, of course. Liberalism leads to leftist socialism, of course. Any thoughts there, guys?
Well, I think it was go back to what I was saying before about how it naturally degenerates because of its individualism.
Right.
Well, at the same time, libertarianism leads to a need for socialism because they have no minimum wage. They have no social. They have no. For the most part, I've never heard them even address this a social security net for poor or for uneducated workers or for people who get hurt.
I think.
They.
Well, I think there is a case to be made against the minimum wage in particular, but I do think that there should be systems in place to help those who are in trouble. For example, and I think this would be the optimal solution, is if the state is working on public works projects like roads and bridges and infrastructure and things like that, I think you could take all the people who are on welfare and put them to work and then pay them in order to make sure that they're not just leeching on the system. You put in a hard day's work and then, yeah, you'll get paid.
I'd like to ask a separate question there.
Sure.
I understand that degeneracy is bad for society, like for a state. But what do you define as degeneracy, and where do you draw the line, and how would you restrain degeneracy in a society without compromising
Antisocial behavior.
Let me pull an Anita Sarkeesian. Everything is degenerate. All things are degenerate. All thoughts are degenerate. I kid.
Seriously though, I mean, we humans have very clear dynamics that they've built up over the eons. It's almost missing the point to ask what we consider degenerate. We all have this sort of intuitive idea. Sure, don't smack people. Don't sleep around if you're a woman. Don't attack women if you're a guy. It's all really obvious. We already know this instinctively.
I think the more important question is the second part. How do we get rid of it?
Oh, I got an answer to this. While you could use the state to enforce social norms, I think it's actually more productive, based on history, to enforce it socially. So you have a population that is, let's say you don't want any more communists in your society, right? And this is an extreme example, but if you found out that they were communists, all you have to do
helicopters.
Well, that's one solution, but let's say that you find this out, and just within their community, just refuse to interact with them. Don't sell them anything. Don't rent anything to them. Kick them out of your society nonviolently, and it tends to work out better. People will take pressure from their community easier than from the state. It's easier to rebel against the state than it is your community. When you're a social outcast as a human being, it has a much greater effect than the threat of police violence, as far as I can tell throughout history. So if you want these social norms, you have to get them to be enforced through the community. And it starts in the home as well. It starts with parents. Like, if you want your children to not grow up to be degenerates, then make sure that you make it very clear, but in a non harsh way. Like, it's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, your social norms come from the family. They come from the community. If they come from the state, you're going to start getting pushback, and that's where we've ended up today.
Well, see,
Um,
the commies they try to use propaganda to get people to do exactly what he mentioned about at home and socially. But then again, then they turn around when that fails because it's not natural. They turn around and try to use the state to push propaganda. So that's kind of why it's not working out for them.
Well, communism is a particular example where we run into issues. Anyone who's advocating for a political system that tears down traditionalist values or tears down society or promotes equality should be removed from society. They are unwanted. They are subversives. We don't want them in our society. And so you can still have free speech and still protect people from uh, outside influence, I guess. That's my problem with the liberals, is that they're not strong enough to take a hard stance on this. Like, if you have communists in your society, they're going to use every way possible to subvert and destroy that society. That's their primary goal. Yeah, go ahead, Classes. You wanted to say something?
Well, I feel like I'm being called out here. It's not that we're not pacifists. And I'm not a fucking liberalist. Let me just say that for anybody paying attention, because that term really pisses me off. Fucking pussies. But we're not gonna, the idea of that we hold is that, and I get you can go into the genetic and biological evidence for people holding their political views, but the idea that we hold is rationality of human. And if we're going to present you with enough evidence to describe and explain our beliefs, eventually we can convince people that the degenerate commie ideas that you're shitting on right now are the ones that they should lean away from and lean towards in the idea of the individual and libertarianism or liberalism. But that idea of, we're just going to sit down and let be taken over. No, we do have a sense of when things are bad, there is a need to fight back. There is a need for the social contract to be expanded for the sake of the government protecting the state and itself. We're not pacifists.
Well, I get that, and that's the good position. Cheers to that. But there are so many liberals, and in particular the liberalist movement, who don't think like that. When I talk to them, they're like, "Yeah, no, we're not going to silence anyone for any reason." I'm like, "Okay, well, now your society's open to destruction from within." So,
and I get that, and that's one of the things where, in some of the discussions that I've had with people from the far right, or alt right, is the idea of the Great Replacement or the Great White Genocide, whatever we're going to call it. And you know what? If the evidence presented to me was something that made me freak out about it, then I would argue that maybe there could be some action taken, because is historical precedence for it. Especially, I'm a Canadian.
mm-hmm.
The government puts in funds and puts in active, incredibly active effort to maintain Indigenous culture in Canada, to make sure that it's shown on television.
Hold on one sec. Mustard Chief, yeah, when you just have a base role, if you join the live voice channel, you're muted by default, and I'll have to unmute you. You're unmuted now, but if you leave and come back, you'll be muted by default. Anyway, go ahead, Classes.
So there is precedence for actively working to preserve a culture and an idea, a culture and an ethnicity, because it is deemed as being on the verge of extinction. We do it for species of all kinds of different life forms on the planet. We are not necessarily, and I'm not speaking for the fucking liberalist because I ain't one, but as a classical liberal, apolitical, centrist, whatever you want to call me, we are not concerned or at the same level of fear for the Great White Replacement in the same way that you are. We do have a concern, but your measures are much more extreme. There are things along the lines of, ask a liberalist. Most of them are very much on the board with closed borders. They're very much based around the idea of a social contract. They're very much around the idea that you need to maintain the culture that you have, because yes, it can be subverted by other ideas.
In America, we don't give terrorists free speech rights. I just thought we would know that.
In Canada,
it's a variability of in Canada. We go about free speech. We don't even give our citizens free speech rights.
Yeah, there's some issues with that. I would say that the centrist position, while noble and seems to work out, you're going to fall along the same issues that we're facing now. It's just more status quo garbage as far as I'm concerned. You're going to run into the same issues that we're having today anyway, because you're not willing to take what you would call extreme measures to preserve yourself.
No. We are willing, or I am willing, from a liberal perspective, to take extreme measures when necessary. Martial law is a thing that exists in all liberal societies,
Sure.
east of fucking anywhere in Europe, right? That does not mean full-on authoritarianism. There are certain restrictions and ideas that supersede, or we ideologically, I know it's a high fairy tale kind of idea, abstract concept, but we like to supersede those ideas with things like the Magna Carta is a shit example, but you know what I mean? No man is above the law. If we institute martial law, there is a time period to it. There is a reestablishment of government afterwards.
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
And if that does, and even if that doesn't happen, there is a recognition that you're going to eventually run into that cycle where a military state, a police state develops because of martial law. They refuse to give up power. The citizens start rebelling at some point. The citizens start arguing for a state, unless that leader is in some way benevolent to an extent where you submit to the fascist control. It all depends on the circumstances. I would say, you know what? The worst thing I could do is characterize myself as a liberalist. I'm a political pragmatist at this point.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, feel free. Go ahead.
How do you feel according to this statement? Because I'm paraphrasing from The Art of War. Sun Tzu said that the military and the citizens must be of one accord with the sovereign in order for there to be a stable society. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
I would say there needs to be, if not a contract or an understanding, there needs to be an equilibrium there. I don't think, but at the same time, the military needs to have a subordinacy to the state at a certain time. It would really depend. I feel like to say like, well, one book it's been established as that's an effective way to rule. I would really say it would probably depend on your circumstances. Machiavelli's The Prince has plenty of applicable circumstances, but every now and then, honey's a little bit better than vinegar, you know?
Sure. I would say that this is a much broader argument, and we'd have to start from first principles, because I would make the argument that the nation state itself is founded on the principle of identity, in particular ethnic identity. So, I mean, we differ there, but as far as political pragmatism, yeah, sure, I get that for the time being, but the tides are changing. Lots of things are happening that are going to influence and push people towards the right. So
I do agree with that to a large extent. Historically speaking, in the majority of situations, yes, states were ethnically built. That is the result of technology and travel and restrictions based on human movement. But in more modern times, since globalization and extensions of technology, we have America, Canada, large parts of South America, for example, being states formed on multi ethnicities.
And
now we can
they're
argue
all failures. Yeah.
Okay. I was about to say we can argue about the stability of these states, but it is, I guess, the more pragmatic argument would be that the experiment's not over for us yet. In the same way that certain people yell at climate alarmists, that's the way we would be looking at your perspective.
I would say this. I would say that we have a historical precedence that shows that multi-ethnic societies don't work. It's not just this is not a new thing. There has been many times in history. Well, Rome is a prominent example, but the most recent one is just the Austro-Hungarian Empire that started World War I. You have two factions of people who are very different from one another and want to gain control over the state, and they constantly fought each other, and it ended up where one ethnic revolutionary shot and killed another leader from the other side, and it ended up in World War I. And because we didn't have these states that were broken off into ethnic identities where people were allowed to rule themselves, because we didn't have that, it led to World War I. And you can go back in time and look at every single empire that was multi-ethnic. The only way that a multi-ethnic empire can even remotely hold on to itself without breaking apart is through extreme authoritarianism, sort of like how Rome was. But even then, it couldn't survive.
Hold on, though. Is there a precedence for any civilization extending beyond that? Because then you'd have to isolate those groups. You'd have to isolate those empires and argue that the multi-ethnicity was the reason for their failure in every situation. And every empire that has ever existed up until the United States has failed. And
I would say the Chinese Empire.
Hold on, we're just waiting. for America to fail at this point. I'm not going to argue that the rise and fall of civilization is not doesn't have a pattern or a cyclical to it. To think that at any point this is going to last forever is a little naive.
That I wasn't saying that that was the only reason empires fall. I'm saying that there is a particular precedent that's set where these multi-ethnic societies didn't just collapse on their own. It always devolved into ethnic conflict. So, with Rome, it was a multitude of factors. They were just too large and too spread out, but you did have ethnic conflict between what they called the barbarians and who were, technically native Romans, but not all of them were born within Italy, I guess. But let's look at
Pretty sure those are the Greeks.
let's look at Austro-Hungary in particular. So you had a pan-Slavonic movement and you had a pan-German movement, and it was divided in the pan-German movement between reuniting with Germany at the time and just having Austria as their own state under their own ruler. But these two groups constantly fought within what you could call the parliament or the Congress of the time, and they were both advocating for their own self-rule in the state. So both of them were vying to control the state. This sort of ethnic conflict is fairly common. It's common in every Western society now. You have one group of people that have a unique identity. It's usually ethnic. Yeah, Yugoslavia is another good example. They want control over the state, and they will fight to get it. And what happens is if they gain that power, they will subjugate the other ethnicities within it. So it's a lose-lose situation. Either you get civil war, which breaks the country apart, or you get one ethnicity subjugating the other one, and it leads to conflict of the highest order, which is civil war.
Speaking of ethnic cleansing.
No, go ahead, Dortex.
So, speaking of ethnic cleansing, what do we do about the blacks in the United States?
Well, as Sargon of Akkad said himself, non-whites should. The conclusion he came to was non-whites should not reside in America.
Well, I mean, as a pragmatist, I wouldn't even go that far. I would almost say that if there's going to be an amicable split between the races in the United States, they need to work together. They need to come together and say, hey, we're going to respect each other's right to rule ourselves, and we're going to split up the country and sort of form our own states. I think that would be the most peaceful solution. Now, there are people within the United States, in particular some Black and Hispanic nationalists, that want to control the U.S. federal government as it is, and then use that power to subjugate everyone who isn't of that race. So it's a dangerous...
Speaking of subjugation, I have been summoned.
What's up, Crambo? Welcome to the stream.
Cramboat. Oh, we were talking about Rome, so I had to call in the Muddy Cramboat because that man's Roman knowledge is up there.
He thought the Romans had some conflict with barbarians, and that's the Greeks.
Well, I mean, technically, from the Greek perspective, the Romans were barbarians.
I was more mentioning when the East Asian invaders started coming into Europe and they started to push the Germanics into Roman territory, you began to see a clash between the two civilizations, and it fell along what is essentially ethnic lines.
Well, actually, the reverse of that is true. The Germans ended up pushing the Gauls into German territory, and they also ended up pushing the Sarmatians into Roman territory.
Exactly, yeah. If you want to look at the specifics, it was like a big, long domino chain that pushed everybody further to the west.
Well, it was the Germans expanding that pushed the Swiss, the Belgians, the Gauls, and the Sarmatians out.
Okay, maybe I'll have to relook at it.
I did. My apologies. I did call Cramboat in for a specific reason because I don't have the Roman knowledge to push this up. Is it fair to classify the America's rise and fall as an empire to the Roman rise and fall of an empire?
Of course.
I'll recommend Stefan Molyneux's video on the rise and fall of Rome and modern parallels. It's very good.
Stefan Molyneux, get on my level.
Also, Crambo has always made the case that we're basic manifest destiny. I mean, come on now. Which one are we talking about, Rome or USA?
I'm asking Cramboat. I don't have the knowledge for this. That's why I brought it.
Would you like me to make the case?
I can bullshit you all fucking night if you want, but I don't
Would you like me to make the case as to why the American Republic and the Roman Republic are very, very similar?
Yeah, go for it. Preach.
Right, so which one I'm talking about. The greatest nation in the world sends colonizers out, and they sail across a large body of water. They make contact. They establish a beachhead on this new area that civilized man has never been to before. They fight several wars with the natives and then interbreed with them. They then decide to establish a bicameral republican system of governance with a number of checks and balances in it. One house being led by a popular assembly, the other by a more senior group called the Senate. This group then, after dealing with immediate problems from local rivals, then decides to expand to the limits of geography from sea to shining sea. After this, they find a great road across a different large body of water that they then have a cold war with. They subjugate it, and they end up becoming the hegemon of the entire known world.
That sounds pretty similar to the United States.
It does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. So what we were talking about is the rise and fall of multi-ethnic societies and some historical examples of multi-ethnic empires having ethnic clashes and how it almost inevitably leads to conflict unless you have.
Well, Rome didn't really have ethnic clashes, unless you're considering the Jews. That was more of a religious thing than an ethnic thing.
Yeah, I would never say that Rome was entirely because of ethnic conflict, but there was certainly some within there. You know,
I would argue that ethnicity was not a deciding factor at all.
Well, I'm not saying it is. I'm saying that it existed, that it happened.
I think it was specific. I think it was the ethnicity's culture, like their.
It was well. It wasn't even the culture, because Rome was so good at assimilating that every time it steamrolled a new group of people, they would become Romanized again, except for the Jews, and that's because of their religion, not their culture per se.
Sure.
Well, there goes that theory.
Well, there's a bit more. There's a bit more in there, but anyway. So we were talking about the. Go ahead, Pax.
I feel like it has to do with more. It's not an ethnic bounds; it's a racial bounds. I feel like ethnicities are made up of relatively the same race of people. They're just different cultures from different regions within the same home territory, such as Europe, Africa, or Asia. I think that it has to do with more.
Then how did the Romans survive? How did the Romans survive for over 500 years, having Berbers, Arabs, Jews, and Southern Europeans?
Oh, they were
because
very totalitarian.
In those territories, they allowed those people some sense of self-governance.
They did that for every province.
Well, then that's how they could have stability. If people think they're governing themselves, they're going to be more stable. That's the problem with blacks in America. They don't think they're governing themselves. They think the white man is governing them.
Yeah, but I mean, these people spread to other provinces as well. I mean, the Arabs can stay.
But that's what could have eventually led to the collapse. Once they're in the core territory and make up a large percentage of the population, they can divide the democracy.
That's not what happened
now in America.
That's not what happened at all in Rome, though.
Well, honestly, I'm just saying that's what I think. That's what I think it is, because I don't know Roman history. I don't study Rome. You know,
okay.
I can look at America, and I'm more or less speaking on America. Like, that's what's happening right now in America.
We're drawing a parallel from America to Rome, and the situation you're describing did not happen in Rome.
So going back to ethnic cleansing, we only have to kill 2% of the population to have
all right,
crime rate.
No ethnic cleansing on the channel. Thank you.
Ethnic cleansing, that's a strategy that has historically been very successful.
I'm just saying I have a solution, a final solution.
No. The thing is, we know exactly, and thanks to Canadians. And all
right, we're not talking about fucking ethnic cleansing, Dortex.
On the subject of ethnic cleansing, though, the Romans did try it and it didn't work.
Yeah, that's it. It's not going to work. So
because it has never worked.
exactly. So that's why I'm more in favor of the peaceful, amicable separation between groups. But anyway, so I think
You want to
classes.
split the empire in half between East and West, Constantine style.
Couldn't a case be made that the issue isn't race but culture, like Tommy said?
Yeah,
It is a
good.
part of
I
it.
would
Yeah,
be driving.
That's why I'm not
A multi-ethnic empire can thrive. A multicultural society cannot.
yeah. That's why I'm not a pan-Europeanist like Richard Spencer is. I'm more of an ethnic nationalist. I think that each different ethnicity is defined sort of by their culture and their language, and they're not. It's not going to work. Like especially in Europe, like the EU is a failure because each country is so wildly different. Yeah, they're part of the same race, and yeah, they can get along together, but they all have the right to rule themselves. You know.
Well, I think
America's doing just fine.
the EU is that they don't have the ability to rule themselves. That's why the UK left.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So the EU, this sort of pan-European government doesn't work, and it's not going to work. So it needs to be destroyed in favor of ethnic nationalism rather than racial
The
nationalism.
only reason that Rome was able to unite so much territory is because back in the classical era, there wasn't really a lot of well-defined high-class culture. It was really just like tribal affiliations
Yeah,
that were easily
I
down.
would say
once
you could. It was just technology. Like it's very easy to dominate a culture. Well, I say culture, but it's very easy to dominate a people when they have little to no technology at all. But yeah,
It's just that at the time, life under the Roman boot was so superior to life outside of Roman influence that a lot of people didn't even necessarily care that they were being culturally assimilated because of the huge quality of life.
yep, that's also a factor as well.
I mean, you go from being a loose tribal affiliation that's basically like pre-Iron Age basic agricultural society in like aqueducts and hookers and cocaine.
But I mean, look what
It was
happened
a
in
pretty good
Africa,
deal.
though. Look what happened in Africa, though. We found a bunch of savages. We gave them, education, water, infrastructure, electricity. Sure, a few of them got their hands chopped off, but they were going to do that to each other anyway. What happened when we left? They destroyed it all.
Well, I mean, that happened in Europe too.
Yeah, I had some questions about imperialism specifically.
Imperialism is bad. Okay, it's bad.
I mean, like when Rome went into Africa, North Africa was the breadbasket of the empire. And when the Romans withdrew and they collapsed, not only did North Africa fall back into savagery, but all of mainland Europe did.
You wanted to, Mustard, you want to talk about imperialism?
And the teacher was basically saying that the reason Africa's poor is because imperialism and because corporations suck it dry nowadays. That was basically.
I'd say China does.
I'm going to
Interestingly
recommend you guns, germs, and steel.
Yeah, interestingly enough, we look at some of the African civilizations outside of Africa and within it that really weren't colonized and didn't really have anything stolen from them, and they're just as poor, if not poorer, than the countries that were supposedly, colonized and stolen from. There's virtually no difference.
Literally, the resources that the Europeans, quote unquote, stole from the Africans were resources that the Africans had no way to access or utilize on their own. So it's a moot point.
Yeah.
Look at Africa
Pre-colonization. How in the fuck are you going to harvest and use diamonds?
I had this argument the other day with some people saying that, like, if we had just left Africa alone, they could have industrialized and caught up to Europe.
Yeah, maybe in like 10,000 years.
Exactly.
Well, I mean,
like if
Japan did it, but those were some special circumstances.
East Asia
right.
is basically like an American colony. But yeah, anyway, so go ahead, Goldstein.
The thing is, if you went to the Kalahari Desert, they were still in the Bronze Age. There was still people with spears and living in huts. But with Japan, there was a centralized government. There were people who could make decisions and industrialize and choose to.
Don't knock the spear.
20th century, exactly.
Japan was pretty all right prior to Western contact, they just didn't have that many resources. I mean, they really couldn't make use of the shitty iron that they had. They didn't have that much coal. When we showed them some technology, they could make better use of it. But it's
I mean, it's not that they didn't have resources. Again, it's just that they had no way to access these resources.
That's what I'm saying. It's a two-factor thing.
Plenty of high-quality iron. Africa has, I think, the most platinum in the entire world. They have a shitload of diamonds. But that's useless to you if you're a Stone Age society.
Yeah, doing nothing for getting.
It doesn't matter how much oil you have. If you don't have any drilling technology more advanced than digging.
Tommy, you're breaking up again.
Irrelevant.
Oh yeah, Crambo is. It might be.
You're lagging a bit there, buddy. But yeah, it's so there's some good and bad things about imperialism on all sides, but can't change history.
Like imperialism, the whole thing can basically be chalked up to the use it or lose it doctrine, and the Africans definitely had no way to use their resources, so they lost.
I mean, the only reason that they see this as it's not even that they see imperialism as evil. They're just upset that they didn't think of it first. Like if they,
that the Africans would have done the same in Europe if they had been given half a chance.
Yeah, exactly. They're just upset that they didn't do it first or do it to us. So,
in fact, they would be actively punished for not doing so.
All right, Colossus, you want to get back to degeneracy? I see we got a couple people here in the chat.
Well, I was gonna say I could get back into degeneracy because I got a lot to say, and I'm curious about your views specifically on that topic. But
Sure.
Given what we were just talking, or what I was just hearing from Crambo, and it's just there is I agree with you. History is 100% contingent. History is history. What happened happened, and there's no way of going back from that. But there are different international social norms now in terms of how we respect sovereignty within nations. And that's the result of technological advancement and us growing and having to interact in ways that we didn't have to before because we weren't dealing with a globalized world. We've reached a point now where if your neighbor's polluting the fucking river next to you, well, now that river's a goddamn ocean and we're shoving ships through it 1,000,000 miles a day, and we're going to have to reach a point where we got to delegate together. The circumstances have changed. I don't think it's a fair application.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who advocates for imperialism today is just fooling themselves. It's not even like, okay, disregarding the moral issue, it's just not pragmatic. Like, there's no way that we're going to invade and colonize mainland China. Like, going, like, we could probably
You say that, but we've done it before.
What about colonization or like imperialism in the future? Like, say we ever make it to space.
But remember, we have is mainland China.
But that's the same level of not abstract argument, but you're just playing in thought experiments at that point. We can make projections all day long, but there's no,
as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'd like to point us back to the time that we did invade and colonize mainland China.
Yeah, but I'm talking about today. Like today.
This was in like World War II. This wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah, but we're not in World War II. We're in 2018.
But you're saying that it would be impractical and impossible to do, but it happened not that long ago.
Jesus Christ. No, impractical today, today and tomorrow and in the future until they collapse. It wouldn't be practical today. I don't care what happened in the past. I'm talking about today. I understand that we did it in the past when they were essentially just a bunch of, rice huts and communism, like starvation. Okay, that's fine. But today,
I'm talking about like the 1920s and 30s. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it was pretty shit. It's not comparable to today.
My great grandmother wasn't alive in the 1920s. That is a long fucking time to be talking about.
Oh shit, mine was.
Yeah, but it's in the modern age. Like not all that much.
Yeah. Do you know how much happened in the last 100 years? What
has changed about occupying and holding territory between two powers that have unified, organized armies?
Yeah, I mean,
the fact that China has the biggest military in the world.
I mean, but even if they are a paper tiger, I'm not going to send young white men to go die off in some foreign land. I'm not going to do it. I refuse.
Okay, well, who said it
There's
was
no
young
point.
white?
I mean, that's
White men are the ones that take up combat roles. The minorities take up all the support roles.
Who says it's a Western nation that's doing this? I'm just saying that it's
well, who
been
the
done.
fuck else is going to do it? Because we're the only ones who are at least more technologically advanced than they are.
I mean, Japan did it last time.
Power by
Yeah, but
2020.
Japan relies on us
20
almost exclusively for their military needs.
Well, that's not really true anymore.
Well, yeah, because the Prime Minister Abe has basically done away with all of the restrictions on military building, and he's basically rebuilding Japan's military. But right now, if China and Japan went to war and no one else helped them, they would get overrun.
Russia could probably pull it off.
Yeah, maybe. It would be fucking pointless, but they probably could.
I don't know about pointless. China's pretty mineral rich.
But imagine the amount of people you have to deal with. Russia could occupy China, or parts of China, but there's so many people in China that it'd just be a headache. So,
Well, you wouldn't be occupying the coast. You'd be occupying the mineral-rich interior.
Well, then you have to ask what price are you willing to pay for those materials? Gold or blood? Yeah. I think the blood cost is too high.
Freighter in the YouTube chat brings up a good point about South Africa. If you want to colonize something and you actually want to talk about something feasible, you should recolonize South Africa because the platinum.
Yeah, like I said,
it's really needed in most
South
modern
Africa
technologies.
Is pretty mineral rich too.
If anything, we could probably go back to Africa, but right now, I mean, we have enough problems in our own countries. So,
the only situation that I feasibly see as being like a pseudo colonization thing in the future, outside of space travel, is the South Koreans taking over the North.
Well, yeah, but
so Mimir, can I ask you a question that's
sure.
off this topic and bring us in another direction, because it kind of relates? But I'm curious then, and I don't know if you're specifically fall into the authoritarian wing of the right-wing ideology. I know there was a conversation about fascism earlier, but I can't remember all the details. It's the same application about the resources, trouble, etc., that you have to put into occupying a foreign nation. Is the same? Is that not applicable to the internal control as well? Does it not cause the same stress and strain on resources?
I mean, could you maybe rephrase that? Maybe say it again. Sorry,
just
boomertech over here.
Just the idea of applying imperialism internally, which is fascism. You argue against it in large ways. Now, I hear conversations from the alt-right constantly about there is a debate within the alt-right about fascism or authoritarianism and to the extent at which it should be applied.
Right.
All the arguments you're making for imperialism right now being unsustainable, that's kind of what liberals go and apply to internally for fascism being unsustainable. I'm just curious what your perspective is on that.
Well, I don't consider myself a fascist based on the doctrine of fascism. I don't believe that the state is the be all end all of a civilization. I think that the people are the be all end all, the race, the ethnicity. If anything, if I was going to subscribe to right wing socialism, which I mean, in some ways I am, some ways I am not, it would be along the lines of National Socialism rather than fascism, which are similar but distinctly different. And we talked about this earlier at the beginning of the stream. The difference is, what is the foundation of the nation state? Is it the state itself, or is it the people beneath it? So I'm more in favor of protecting the people beneath it. And because of that, I think that using the state as a tool, and a strong state, you could call it authoritarian, and you probably will, but using that as a tool to preserve the sovereignty of the people underneath it is paramount in preserving who we are as people. So,
and then that ties effectively into what I wanted to really talk about, which was degeneracy. But yeah. It really, because you're making an argument for the maintenance of the state, something that I'm getting about the ethnic makeup of the state and the racial makeup of the state, and the view of the alt-right, it entirely revolves around the idea of stability of the state. But you have an idea of that. But at the same time, it's not fully rooted in fascist ideology. It's not rooted in the state being the end all be all. You still have more of an American view of rights being endowed by God or natural rights as applied to you.
Sort of.
Or is that okay? That's mischaracterization. Sort of. My fault.
Not mischaracterization. I think that there is a very take a very broad stance on that. I think that yeah, in a philosophical sense, yeah, some rights are inherent to existence, like property. I can go out and I can take something and I can call it my property. You know, that's just an inevitability. But as far as the state is concerned, I don't agree with the libertarian position that rights are inherent to your being and that they should just exist. I think that you need a state to preserve those rights because there are people outside of your group that are going to come in and stomp all over your rights. So there's a necessity to have a state until we reach the point of utopia in this world, which I don't think is very likely.
Okay, so then, because that could be, I could say the exact same thing and then sit back and go, I'm still a liberal. To what extent do you view, because you accept that the social contract is, whether or not it's a high in the pie theory, you accept that the social contract is the deal that we have with the government that our societies are built upon, or that the states are built upon, and part of that is the protection and preservation, depending on the social contract in the country.
There's a caveat to that. There's a caveat to that. So I believe in the social contract because I believe in the collective power of society, of groups of people, as being higher than the individual. Of course, that's a realistic way, but I'm more than willing to rip up the social contract with the state if that state is infringing on the survival of the group. Like, for example, as far as the United States government is concerned, I'm a libertarian. I don't support anything that the U.S. government does. I don't support their funding of Israel. I don't support their foreign wars. I don't support their welfare state. I would be in favor of dismantling all of those things. However, in the future, if we do manage to reclaim, or create an ethno-state that, is founded on the principle of, yes, the group, the race, the identity is the foundation of our society, then I would be in favor of instituting some more of these, what most people would call authoritarian or socialist policies, simply because I want to take care of the group. So in essence, yeah, the social contract is great until the state starts fucking you up, and then you have to tear it down and replace it.
So it is very Aristotelian kind of plutocratic, not plutocratic, but Plato-based in that sense, where there's the benevolent god, not god kings. What did he call them? Philosopher kings.
Yeah,
in a sense. Is that not? And I've heard you take some cracks at Richard Spencer here and there, but I know that's kind of part of the culture at this point. Is that not kind of Richard Spencer-ish with his aristocracy of people born to rule that he advocates for?
No, I shit on Richard Spencer because it's funny. We do agree on some things. It's
okay.
Of course, like, if you're going to have a state, it needs to be powerful enough to protect itself and protect the people beneath it. That's the whole point of having the state in the first place, in my opinion. If you're not protecting the people, if you're not upholding the sovereignty of the people, then there's no point in having the state. There's no point in having it if it can't do that.
Yeah, and you're a big fan in general of the state power need to be checked. If you're going to see, the idea of the state is just allotting the power from a decentralized source. You're looking to centralize the source. You use a lot of historical evidence to back up, and you obviously have a respect for historical evidence. And in the same way that we have historical evidence for multi-ethnic societies crumbling, we have tons of historical evidence for centralized power being corrupt and leading to the abuse of power. So how do you intend to check and balance that with this idea?
I think it's possible to curtail this, and it's just a theory, it's a thought experiment, but it would appear that historically, hold on one sec.
So I do want to state, because without devolving to revolution, because yes, we can constantly correct that by chopping off the heads of the rich, but we don't need to be going in that cycle all day. So yeah.
Sorry, I had to mute Goldstein because he was whining really. His mic was whining really hard. But there seems to be a precedent set for a sort of populist movement. If you have a state that recognizes the foundation of the society is the racial or ethnic group, and they respect that, and they respect themselves, and they have this sort of prideful feeling in who they are and the people beneath them, they're naturally not inclined to violate their own people because they see themselves as one. So, we have to reject class warfare. We have to reject gender warfare or whatever. All of these things, we have to be a unified people, because if we can't do that, then we shouldn't have a state, because there's going to be abuse. But I make the case that if we can awaken this sort of racial consciousness and then form a state, it's very likely that we're not going to see the same types of abuse. And I'm not going to go full authoritarian, mind you. There are some things that I think are better left suited to society to make the changes. As we were talking about degeneracy earlier. That's sort of the stance I was taking there. You know, I'm not going to have gay death squads kicking indoors looking for homos. Certainly not. I think it's, you know, that type of thing is better enforced at the communal level rather than the state.
Yeah, I do find that interesting because so many thoughts. Yes, there is a extent to which I hear that similar argument from the left-wing perspective, kind of the social justice perspective. Their shaming of people is much more broad, much more in your face. But you're talking about the idea of, rather than state enforcing it through violence, more of it just being kind of culturally shunned upon.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like I said earlier, because people are more likely to respond to socio-cultural shaming rather than state enforcement of violence. Like, if you don't want people to do drugs, then don't associate with them. Exclude them from your society, and eventually the problem will take care of itself in one way or another. But as soon as you start wasting taxpayer monies on things like the drug war, you run into some issues. You run into some rights violations. You run into some instances where people get caught up in the legal system and have their lives ruined. And I don't want to do that to my people. So
would you say, and this isn't universal because it would be genetically dependent, but would you say that Western people are largely anti-authoritarian?
In particular, Anglos, yeah, most definitely.
So you just see the shit show that an ethno-state could cause, right? Of like trying the effort to maintain that with the inherent biology of Anglos, for example, being anti-authoritarian.
Well, as far as the Anglos are concerned, I mean, it depends on which Anglos you're talking about, you know, which side of the pond. But my point was that,
collectivist.
Yeah. So Britain in particular, I'm not going to enforce my ethno-state on them. I think they should take back their sovereignty and restore Britain to what it once was. But, you know, they can have whatever state they want. Same thing with France. Same thing with Germany. If they want to listen to my ideas, fine. But ultimately, they need to be able to rule themselves. The native people, I mean. So in my ideal state are the things I'm talking about. It's just an ideal, you know. But really,
oh no, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just rolling down the path.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, this is not to say that there are no issues within society. Yeah, of course there is. Of course, there's going to be some abuses, but to what end? And the whole point of politics and social norms in the first place is to curb conflict amongst people, because reducing conflict is the best evolutionary strategy that humans have ever created. You know, unifying with one another in tribes allowed us to get to where we are today. So now we have to look at and think, what strategies, political, socially, culturally, can we make or use to reduce conflict as much as possible? And one of those is ethnic segregation, because conflict is an inherent part of human nature.
Okay, I see what you're saying, because I full on understand and agree with you on that level of the more we integrate, and I've, oh, somebody's getting background music. I've had that conversation before with Shuggy here in the chat about, there is a certain extent to which, and I brought this argument up earlier, that, you know, eventually you're polluting the river and your neighbor's polluting the river, and you have to get together and sit down and actually legislate, and maybe not full on legislate, but come to treaties and agreements where, you know, the larger we upscale because of the force of technology and the ease of travel and the basically making the world smaller, the more we have to learn to deal with that and work together. And those ethnic groups are going to have to learn to, if not legislate, at least negotiate with each other, even if they are in separate states.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think that, you know, let's take, for example, like the Anglo-Saxon triangle of Britain, France, and Germany, constantly at war with each other. So we
sure that's because I have so much knowledge of that, but
sure, yeah.
But you might have to fill me in. I'm going to take your word for it because I haven't studied it.
Well, I mean, it's just, you know, World War I, World War II, Prussia versus Napoleon, Frederick.
Oh,
that kind of thing.
Okay.
The French.
I thought you were going back to like Celtic regions or something.
Well, I mean, it even goes as far back as that. You know, the Angles versus the Celts or whatever. But really, the point is to reduce conflict amongst those people because they're so similar. There's no point in constantly killing each other over these little bits of land. So we want to instill this like racial consciousness amongst all these different European groups because there's no point to any of these. And a lot of these wars were instigated by people outside of the group. I'm sure we can name some names, but it's all so pointless. Just World War I alone wiped out the entirety of the economic productivity of the 19th century in Europe. So ridiculous, so pointless, over nothing. Nothing got accomplished, and then it led to World War II. And again, the same thing led to the complete destruction of Europe. So I think that if there was any unifying force, it's not going to be religion, of course, because religion is so unstable. It's not going to be language because people want to hold on to their languages. It's not going to be culture because each culture is different. But if you look at genetics, they're all very similar genetically. They all belong to a very similar racial group. And I think that's a good unifier for people to get along with one another, and respect each other's different in-groups.
I do agree with a large chunk of what you said. Once again, technology and the advancement of globalization is always going to be a problem that I think is not being fully accounted for. And I would encourage you to look a little bit into the troubles of states that do not share language when living in close proximity to each other, specifically the Quebecois within Canada.
Yes, I'm aware. That's why I think that
it's a huge boundary.
Yeah, that's why I think that the Quebecois should be able to rule themselves because it reduces conflict. If they had their own state, you wouldn't have this type of conflict, as far as I'm aware, because there should be some kind of mutual respect between countries. In the Western world, when was the last time the United States went to war with Canada? A long time ago. I think that if there was an amicable split between the Quebecois and the Canadian government, I think that there would be an absolute 90% reduction in all of the conflict that's happening right now.
To be honest with you, you would be more likely to go to war with Quebec than us.
Well, sure, but
because on that stance alone, like the rest of Canada, we, for lack of a better term, we're fucking American.
There's a lot of similarities. That's my point. Is that we're so similar. Like, there's no point in us going to war or fighting each other. There needs to be some sort of respect between countries because we have such similar origins. And I think that unifying force between groups could be along racial lines. I think it's extremely powerful because of how identity works within humans. It's a foundational part of us.
So you work to strengthen the state in the most efficient and optimized way, but at the same time, you're constantly on guard for. Personally, I'm asking you: are you constantly on guard for the extent to which that state is using and abusing its power?
Absolutely, yeah. As a group, when we come together, we respect one another and say, "Hey, we all understand that if we want to have collective power that's strong enough to preserve ourselves, we need to form a state." And that's where the social contract comes into play. But as a recognition of history, we also need to understand that we need to be on guard as a group to abuses of power, because that causes too much conflict. So it's I wouldn't say it's a principle, but we need to be on the lookout. If we're going to have a state, we need to be careful. This is a sort of revolutionary spirit that so many people have.
That's why I just view it as like a cycle that, and I was posting in the chat earlier, break the cycle. Historically, that's what it is. It's this rise
You're not
to
going to break the cycle.
And you know what, I'm being hopeful. I'm being an optimist for
nothing
once
wrong
in my
with that,
fucking
but
life.
I'm just telling you, it's an inherent part of human nature to rebel against the last previous generations. It's an inevitability. I think that we might be able to break the cycle thanks to the information age, but it's a pie in the sky kind of dream. So we have to be prepared for cyclical revolutions and things like that.
There's a communist in the channel.
Where at? Is he in here?
This person, Omi Chan.
Hey, what's up, Omi Chan? Welcome to the show. Okay. You there? I have unmuted you. You have been noticed. Yeah, Falcon, I just read your comment. Yeah, it's a good point. The whole reason why we're talking about any of this is to reduce conflict as much as possible. I think that That's
This is why I disagree with James Mason and his whole culture that he's risen. I guess.
Is that the cat who
I
wrote Siege? Hold on, is that the guy who wrote Siege?
Yeah, which is the guy who. It's kind of it's almost as stooping as so low as Californian professors, right? So where they manipulate a bunch of little kids with their shitty propaganda, therefore making them like become pretty much revolutionaries. You know, it's pretty much what it was. I when we were during the audiobook, it was honestly just like how to Goldstein's thing. See, we could. Yeah, we should talk about Atomwaffen. It's very interesting.
Please no Siege posting. There's enough autism in the stream tonight. Maybe another time.
Yeah, but it's all it's mind control. I mean, he even like praised Charlie Manson, which was obviously gathering people for his own good.
Did he praise him for trying to start the fucking race war?
Yeah, and also that he was just a prominent figure that knew how to control minds, controlling minds. Like I understand, yeah, sure, you could like the guy because you knew how to get to people's minds, but I don't think that's always a good thing.
Right. So Atomwaffen, right? Have they gotten shut down yet?
Autism, pure autism.
A whole
bad.
Lot. Even one of the guy. That's where the whole meme came from. Change Team, where the guy killed his son friend like converting to Islam during the night.
Right, yeah. No, okay. My biggest problem with those guys, despite the fact that they're all fucking feds, is that not stand Americans who Nazi larp. I don't mean like in terms of ideas. I don't mean being like anti-Semitic or believing in nationalism or
people who walk around in the streets like waving a Hakenkreuzfahne or
SA. You're an American. You're not German.
We're not trying to don't try to revive
evil
the Third Reich instead.
Evil kebab owner down the street is off, therefore let's go kill him and murder his family.
Well,
no, Annan, I don't. Hold on. I gotta respond to this guy. I'm not talking shit on the ideology. I'm talking shit about people who want to have the aesthetic of people 70 years ago. All right, I don't have a problem with the ideology. I just think that if you are a member of the SA, you're not doing it right.
That's discussed. That's disgusting. That's discussed within Siege, the audiobook, like they actually like Siege, like where they talk about like how some of the like American Nazi Party slowly they like splintered out, right? Because it's not going to appeal to anyone. Nobody's going to be like, oh, this looks hip and cool. Like they had to splinter off. Some of them were like left alone, like attire with the armband and such. They stopped doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the issue afterwards is like these siege people, and like Atomwaffen, they make actual like the intelligentsia of the nationalist movement of the right wing. They make us all fucking look bad. Like, because of the way that the media works, because of how our society is today, like if you give them an inch, they will take a fucking mile, and then they're going to nail us all in the ground and then solidify their control. And then all of this will have been for no fucking reason. So if you can't come to terms with like, yeah, we're going to call people out within the movement so they don't fucking make us look bad. Like there has to be some vetting with these groups.
We need to have standards. We can't just put up there.
I'm not.
We can't have our own branch of the Antifa on the right. I don't want that.
Yeah, we don't want that. Omi-chan and Anon Taskmaster, you guys are unmuted if you want to talk. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to bring up, but yeah, I mean, there has to be a vetting process. You can't just because then you open yourself up to subversion. Like if you look at the Unite the Right rally, which we're coming for full circle here, but what happened was these Antifa members dressed up similarly to the Nationalist, started waving Nazi flags, and stood on the right wing side and started making a fool of themselves in order to give ammunition to their media talking head masters. So there needs to be some fucking vetting. Welcome, Despacito. You are unmuted if you want to talk. Oh boy.
I want to go back to my point about the topic of war.
Sure, go for it.
Because I don't know, I'm sure we have some people in here who would suggest that eternal peace is a good thing. or peace is a good thing in general, right? And I'm not suggesting like total constant war, but I think that to suggest that war is always a bad thing and that war will always cause harm is not necessarily true. And I also think that to deny the human something that's so natural to himself, because there's very good evidence to show that war created civilization in the first place. You could say that the whole purpose of a state is not necessarily to stop war, but to control the flow of war, to make it so that whenever war does happen, it's done in a controlled manner, so that it's not so destructive per se, or like so bad, but to like make sure the human experiences that conflict that is so natural to himself.
Yeah, like war drives innovation.
Sure. Yeah, it absolutely did. I think,
Yeah, I like the war economy. The war economy was pretty prevalent
well, it also created the Gilded Age in the
during
United
World War
States.
II.
Yeah.
I think as a
World War
rule,
II, we were working our asses off. Like that was some pretty good shit.
War promotes innovation.
It promotes
I won't say that as a rule, war is bad, but I think it's important to break the rules sometimes.
Well, it's obviously very important to hold.
Give war a chance.
Well, hold on. It's obviously important to hold strength as a virtue. No doubt about that. But you also have to be intelligent enough to realize the cost of war in particular scenarios, like defensive war. Yeah,
You have to be strategic. You can't be a dumbass in war.
yeah.
Well,
So
of course.
you have to chain up your dogs of war every now and again and hold them back from getting people in a situation like World War I and World War II where they just
and I wanted
destroyed
to go
everything.
back on. I hate this whole natural argument. Oh, it's natural, therefore we should do it. No, I don't think. I'm sure it could be natural, but I'm sure you could control your fucking dick, all right? Like, listen,
War and peace are both natural. The thing about war is you can't be afraid to go to war, though, and that's kind of seems what it's like. That seems like what they're doing to me. What they're doing to the world now. There hasn't been a war. There hasn't been an actual boots on the ground war between people that we considered superpowers since the end of World War II, which led to an explosion in population, which is part of the problem now. The masses haven't been culled.
I agree. We need to get that population down.
Yeah, but I don't think
isn't
that the people should
necessarily-
decide when war should happen. I don't think the people are the best deciders for such things.
Make an
Yeah.
observation.
When someone attacks your people or makes threats to your civilization, like Kim Jong-un saying, "I'm going to nuke America," I'm going to nuke a threat, and he took American citizens and treated them like shit, like dog shit.
Yeah, but that's defense. That was my point. That's a defensive measure against someone who's legitimately threatening you. But any calls for like imperialism,
See, this is why Donald Trump puts his dick on the table. I mean, I think that's another reason why I like Donald Trump.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he holds strength as a virtue.
Yeah.
So he understands the power play, where you have to walk around with the biggest dick on the block, but then know when to use it. Like
It's Teddy Roosevelt shit, ride around in your giant ass boat and say "fuck you, suck my dick."
yeah, make a legion of M1 Abrams tanks and then parade them through the streets of Washington D.C. But then
Yeah, it doesn't
don't
matter
use
if a
them.
couple of homos get ran over because they decided to stand in front of it. Go ahead.
Oh no.
You've heard about that, correct? Like,
Yeah.
they said we're gonna protest by laying down underneath the tank. Good
Yeah,
job.
it's a fresh new coat of paint for the tanks. They're gonna be red.
I just wanted to draw some, make an observation here. In the 1400s, China was ahead of Europe technologically. Like they were a world superpower. You had Zheng He was going around with his ships and everything, and they kind of decided to go isolationist when they realized the rest of the world was inferior. China being a really stable country, with things like Confucianist system.
Stable is kind of arguable.
I mean, as stable as the ancient world can get, as far as I'm concerned.
Compared to
Yeah,
Europe,
I'm not gonna speak on this. I don't know much.
but they
China is
kind of
really
closed
stable.
themselves off and never really advanced.
They never what? They never really advanced. Is that what you said?
Conflict. Well, compared to Europe,
Right.
Well, I think it goes off
lack
of
of
this
conflict.
theory.
Yeah, I
'Cause-
wouldn't argue for isolationism. No, I mean we have, brothers and sisters across the pond that if they come into blows, that we should help them. But that's a defensive scenario. Anyway,
You always gotta save the Italians. You know?
Well, we're getting close to the end of the stream here. We've been in here for 2 hours almost. If anyone wants to bring up something next time, I know we've got Omi-chan here who wanted to talk, but their voice chat isn't working, so maybe we'll save it for the next stream. But thanks for everyone for coming out. I think we hit like 27 viewers at one point. It's pretty good for our first stream.
Pretty good.
Any closing statements? Anybody? Speak your piece now.
The Kulaks deserved it.
There we go. That's
The who?
That was pretty adorable.
Who deserved what?
The Kulaks.
Kulaks.
The Kulaks deserved what, my dude?
I don't think that's the dude.
They got sent to the gulag.
All right, closing statements, everybody.
Don't read Siege.
Briefly skim over Siege.
Yes.
This was a productive stream.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was fun. I don't know when I'll stream again, but we'll at everyone on the Discord, so stay signed in.
Oh, no schedule.
Nah,
I do have one. I do have one closing statement.
Yep, go ahead, classes.
I just want to say we need to discuss degeneracy.
Oh
because
no,
I am a degeneracy advocate.
I think Omi-chan needs to
Then we should pull in Nathan Polbrook for that episode. If that's the case. Remember that.
Okay, next stream topic. If Classless is around, oh, he just left. If he's around, well, we will answer the homo question.
We have to bring in Nathan.
Yes.
He's like the grade A example of that.
Yeah, we'll bring in like Steele or Brian or someone like that to.
Look, Miramar, I have a solution for all degeneracy and communism.
Gas 'em.
Oh God.
Death squads.
My dude, death squads and gas.
Let's not and say we did.
Well, we already did it. But
I'm trying not to get banned off of YouTube yet.
I'm just saying, when I run as a fascist to try to take over peacefully, my political platform or my political slogan is going to be fascism. It fucking works.
Well,
gonna end up like Augustus Sol Invictus in the Libertarian Party with a eagle and fasces. Remember him?
Let's design a new flag. We need an American Fascist Party, Black Shirt Party for America.
When the fuck are we gonna get an American Caesar?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that guy that was saying Americans shouldn't walk around with swastikas. You know, reading Mein Kampf, reading Siege, and reading Nazi literature is one thing, but you got to remember, my grandfather, and if you're an American, your grandfather or great grandfather probably fought those guys. You know, most Americans see them as our enemies.
Call yourself a nationalist. You shouldn't be flying the flag of a foreign nation.
Well, I mean, the aesthetic is pretty nice, but anyway, it's.
I'll admit, but a nicer one is ours.
Yeah, we definitely need to make our own.
Yeah, we need one with the big giant Star of David.
and a giant pink donger. And it
says
curls.
Boomer Nationalism on it.
Yeah, Boomer Nationalism. That's our new political party. All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream now. Thanks for watching.